Kia ora. Thank you for coming. That's a very big picture of my face. I know how to work a remote. I'm James Dean. I'm doing the talk on music stuff and designing it. This isn't how to compose music, so if you're coming along for all that kind of stuff, that's not me. This is thinking about how the music's going to interact with your game, and in particular, Wanderer. So I'm James Dean. I've been in audio post for 10 years. I moved out of audio post into game audio, doing television and advertising, all that kind of linear fun stuff. Played all kinds of music for ages and ages, like playing music. Switched to game audio full-time in 2019, forming my own little company called Arco Audio, focusing purely on game audio. And I've worked on games like Wanderer, Icarus, Before We Leave, but like I said, today I'm going to be talking about this one. I was the entire audio team on Wanderer. Obviously I wrangled in some devs every now and then when I needed tools, but this was my whole baby, and I got a really holistic view of it, being sound designer, musician, and also like getting casting and dialogue and all that kind of stuff. So I'm going to be blabbing on about this. If you haven't seen anything of Wanderer, it's a VR time travel game where we use environmental interactions, time travel mechanics to solve these puzzles and progress this narrative. But it is at heart a very narrative experience and a story where you do stuff within it rather than sort of a puzzle game with narrative sprinkled on top. So the music really needed to support the way the game was and felt, and the beats and the agency the player had. So I identified relatively early the kinds of things that I needed to do other than the obvious music things. It needs to convey and support the player progress. There are a lot of puzzles and a lot of areas, and you can quite easily get confused about what you should be doing, and it's nice to have some just backup that you're in the right place. Wanderer, you are a silent protagonist. You have a sidekick that exposition. It's a really nice tool, but it's also nice to have this much more subtle version of that kind of going, you're on the right track. Oh, here's some music progression. You have progressed the puzzle slightly, you know what I mean? And have that kind of musical, slightly less in your face feedback that you're getting somewhere. Needs to support the emotional content of the story. There's a lot of narrative stuff, and there's a lot of dialogue, and especially in a game that's got a lot of questions, like a lot of mystery and that kind of thing, it's nice to play some sort of mysterious music to support that, so the player's not like, should I know what's going on? Like, not ever confused about what emotion they should have. I mean, players are smart, they get this stuff really well, but sometimes if something is kind of a little bit, you're supposed to be confused a little bit, it's nice to have things that support that and make the player, like a safety net, I guess, for the player to be able to go, yeah, I'm on the right track with how I'm feeling. And it needs to be reactive, so people don't play the same way. It needs to make sense for a whole bunch of play styles, basically. Problem is, we have players, they do silly things. They can control the player progression, the puzzle progression, can travel to multiple locations at any time, so they can jump out of this puzzle and just go, nah, I'm out of here, jump over to this other thing, and the music still needs to kind of be cohesive-ish and make sense. And they have agency over the camera, locations, movement, and the player character at all times. So we can't do cutscenes. If you've got a big piece of narrative, we can't go, stop moving, look at this thing. VR is so amazing that you're immersed and it's very close to you and you feel like you're in this space. And when you grab somebody and move them or move their head, it feels quite violating. And also it's just that whole nausea thing that happens when you're being moved and your body's not doing it. So, and we wanted to leave the players with that sense of agency as well. So we couldn't control them doing that either, and it still needed to make sense. So very quickly, what is adaptive music? I'll be talking about two kinds. Vertical progression, which is you've got one section of music with a whole bunch of layers that are grouped together, and you turn something up or down or fade them in or out depending on player progression. And the other one is horizontal progression, which is moving from a section of music, player progresses, and we come to another section of music, or we use a transition and then go to another section of music and back again. So we're moving through different parts of the music rather than changing the layers on that single part. diagram hopefully explaining better what I was talking about. We've got the 4 tracks in vertical. At the progress point, the blue is a playing track. We fade up the bass, and then the player does another thing, and we fade up the synth. And then we get to the 3rd progress point, and the cello comes down. Whereas horizontal is these sections. We hit a progress point, we move to section A, we hit a progress point, we play a transition and move to section B. So we worked in Unreal 4 with the native audio system, so everything was all on the native, and as you might know, Unreal doesn't really have its own sort of set up music system. It gives you a few tools that you can use, so our devs had to create this music system for me, and these are amazing people who have a lot of technical knowledge, and it really tested my knowledge of music theory and that kind of thing, being able to explain that in a technical way to them and get the things that I wanted. So one of the things that we could do is we could group tracks together and fade them up or down. That was pretty useful. We could loop a track. That's pretty useful. We could cue tracks to start and stop at a quantized point. I could tag a point within a file and say, here's the safe points for us to move in and out of a track. We could, when we stopped the track, we also had a function where we could send the last sort of half a second to a reverb bus to help us make those transitions work a bit more. So rather than it just kind of stopping and fading out, we could blip some of it to a reverb, and that kind of made it tail over the next transition. So that was quite helpful as well. We could use multiple meters and tempos. Turns out not really. That became a real problem with changing the clock that was counting and that kind of thing. So had to do some stuff to work around that, but we kind of got it working. And it was seriously haunted. There are so many times when I thought it should have worked because I really had my head around it this time, and then it just didn't. And it required somebody going on a deep dive to figure out why. But we tamed it in the end. So coming to the first example, Wanderer has a lot of puzzles based on locations. And the very first one here, you have to get this astronaut pin out from behind a whole bunch of blocking factors. But you're in one area the whole time, and you can't really move out. This is a gate to you being able to jump everywhere. And it was a nice way to have the music start at the start of it, and as you're progressing through the puzzle, have the music progress with you and go, you're on the right track, and also build hype. So I identified a couple of goals this thing needed to do. It needs to build intrigue as the player progresses. Most people who have seen the trailer or anything about our game know that there's this time travel thing, which is kind of cool. And you've probably seen it without items, so you know it's coming soon. So you've already got some expectation if you've seen anything media-wise. It needs to work for multiple goal orders. So some of these things you can do in different orders, and it can't be when you do this. It has to be when you progress this puzzle in a way. Then we progress the music. And it needs a catch safe for puzzle crossovers. They end up being multiple puzzles running at one time, which was a design decision right on the line. Probably won't have time to talk about that today, but that was a nightmare. So the progression points are identified, and I will play you a video so these things have some context in a second. When you clean the frame, it plays our intro in our section A, and it loops across that. So you have this background music building until you get to the next point, which is unscrewing event cover. The base sentence on section 1, we're doing that vertical progression. We enter a code on the safe, open it up, we progress to section B. Now this kind of brings the tension up and makes it shifts a bit. And then when you attach this thing that allows you to warp, not quite the warp item yet, have this section C, which is an instant swell, plays once, and then we have no music at all while we're waiting for you to put in this item, and that's intentional as well because we're all waiting for you to do the thing. So I wanted it to be no music, and I wanted it to be do the thing, say the thing. And then next you arrive on the moon and we play the moon intro. So every location that we went to had its own sort of intro music, and then also its own sort of collection of instruments that related to it. So I'll play you what that section looks like, hopefully now.
Interesting. I'm guessing this is important. I know you ain't the help, son, but could you clean that picture off? It might reveal to us something about this counterpart we're looking for. Ah, yes. That'll be your grandfather, cosmonaut Alexei Leonov. A Russian? First man on the moon. And the date, it's circled. 1968. Well, that doesn't seem right. Now that's a bit... Well, this is screwy. You ever read Turn of the Screw? A decent ghost story. But let's hope life doesn't imitate art when we use this electrified screwdriver of yours. Not a fan of ghosts. Or meeting them. You got it. Time to get a handle on things, I suppose. Get in there. Incredible. Back in my day, in order to get married, you sometimes had to jump through a great variety of hoops to get the parents' approval. It was tiresome and trial-filled. I've seen a fair amount of men go crazy. Now this is crazy. Another password. Who does this? Let's look around. Find the next hoop to jump. My counterpart? Well, be honest. How do I look? Present. Woo! Wait! That's got as much punch as my uncle's moonshine. This fragment thing. This antiquity fragment. It feels connected somehow. Try placing it into my counterpart, maybe. Something's got... that happening! Jumping Jehoshaphat! We're out of this world! And not in the same chassis we left in. As curious as to where and when that fragment took us is...
Yeah, cool. So some of those transitions there are a little bit hard to hear on these speakers. They are mixed for headphones. But this is a really quite a quick playthrough as well. I tried not to just speed run through it, but all of those sections would have kept looping until you kind of made the discovery and got to the end and transported. Which in this situation was quite nice because there was nowhere else to go. There are other puzzles similar to that where they're location based, and the workaround for that was if you kind of left that puzzle area, it would fade out, it would save where the music was, and then when you went and got some more items and you came back, it would all fade back in. You'd be like, oh, that's right, I was doing something here, and then you'd be able to get back into it. Or you could hang out somewhere else and do another puzzle, and you were able to do this crossover thing and make it kind of location-based and sort of remember. So a lot of the puzzles were in this vein where you're in an area and you needed to get something working or to get it done. The next one was Von Braun Mansion that I'll be talking about. This is a really big level, and in the development of Wanderer, since I was doing all the audio roles, it tended to happen that the designers would have a script. I would read the script and start composing off of the script because I don't have time at the other end to do it. So I'd start composing at that point when I was reading those story beats. And then we'd grey box it out. I'd do all the dialogue so we could feel how the dialogue was feeling and change the gameplay around. Then once the art started coming in, I could do the sound design, and then I could kind of tweak the music to fit any changes that happened. Now this level was so big that I had a lot of trouble kind of understanding the traversal through the building and how those beats felt off of the script at least. And there were a lot of questions that the designers didn't know yet because they hadn't played through. So I had to come up with a solution that was going to work without really being able to play that level for timelines, because we've got deadlines and that kind of thing, and I need to have the stuff written, and I'm not really great at writing a whole bunch of music a day before it needs to be done and stuff. It's just impossible. So the solution I presented was, hey, what if we had this system? So a little bit more about this level, sorry, is you're escaping Russians trying to kill you in this World War II place. So a lot of it is running away and there's a lot of action. So I ended up designing this music piece that had a low intensity, a medium intensity, a high intensity, and kind of a higher tension, still low intensity as well. And I could test that and put it in game and do it on keys and go, hey, it's all transitioning well, it feels okay as a theme, great, without ever having the game ready. And then once the game was ready, I could go through and tag this area I want it to be, we're going to go up, there's soldiers attacking you, let's go to high tension. This area here we can drop back, doing a bit of traversal across the level. And the other thing is it's not really a straight level either, so you can do some stuff and come back. So it was kind of location based and also narrative based on which music would play. Now this wasn't all the music in the level because there were other things that really needed some bespoke stuff that I ended up writing afterwards, but it was a good blanket way for me to get some music in with kind of a low risk of me writing a bunch of stuff that doesn't work with the timings. So it was something that this level specifically needed because of the way the development was happening. This is a fun one. Yeah, I'll play you, we'll go through the next slide, sorry. So the music needed to cover a range of intensities. It needed to be able to change between any of those intensities, go from a high to a low, to any one of those ones at a time. It needed to react to the locations and the events. It needed to be very versatile and changing. It needed to be set up before the level was playable. That was the big problem on this one. And I needed to be able to recover when the player left, warped out of that level and come back again. We need to be able to jump back in and it needs to still work. And yeah, there's so many progress points in this one, it doesn't make sense to me to kind of list them all out, but here are a couple so that you can see the examples of it. We come in, the bomb drops, there's a stinger and a medium intensity theme starts looping. The battle tank area happens, the music's high intensity there. That scene is very purposely sound design heavy to make it feel quite visceral and intense. So even though the music is high intensity there in the mix, it's underneath the sound design, definitely. Traversing the building is low intensity. Attacked by soldiers is actually low intensity. This card's wrong, sorry. And then sneaking around the mansion has that, it's got a kind of a key change, but still low intensity and meter change so that it feels a bit more tense. And I'll play you a little bit of what that sounds like.
It's the Soviets! They are here! The plans, they are in my office! The plane, I cannot! You must find a way in! The plans, Helmut, they are our only chance!
Cause of that. Hellfire. We need to find a way around to that office. Get those plans.
As long as we can.
That tank looks like it's got a back.
Whew, music's quiet on this. Cool, and I won't show you how the tank section progresses, but magically we're past it. Down to that low intensity, same ostinato, rolling around in the background.
Well, I suppose you gotta fight fire with fire. Holy smokes! More roofing! You're just a regular anthill glade.
It should be.
Hey, down here! Have you managed to locate the plans in my office? You must also remember to destroy the research in the war room. They are the plans for intercontinental rocket technology that would turn the world into a ball of flame. I'll meet you in the basement. Go! Go!
We'd better find those plans. I'd wager my shorthand there's a route here up.
So sorry, before I jump forward, that was a whole bunch of layers, like I said. Cool. There was a whole bunch of layers, like I said, But rather than doing the vertical transitions, I chose to do the horizontal and just make the breakpoints every 4 bars. The reason for that was there's these big long string sections that go through. Didn't want to come in halfway through one of those string sections. Always felt weird, so I could guarantee I was going to be the start of a good phrase when we came in each time. So I'm going to motor through the last parts of this. The very last level was Montauk, which is very cool. It's got big lasers and stuff. This sits somewhere between like a dream and a sort of a memory, a recalled memory. So it had some cool challenges on it. It needed to build a sense of mystery and eventually terrifying power. You need to be like, should we be playing with these kinds of things? It needs to describe the scene as it progresses. Now this is one where traversing the level literally is what progresses the music. Those are the only 2 things I thought were important, apparently. So here's what I ended up going with. The landing, you come in, and there's a diegetic radio playing in the background, and that was very purposeful. You come into a tutorial straight away. It's the first level. You're stuck there until you kind of learn the ropes. A radio is a great way of saying where you are in time and in a space straight away. You can hear radio. Radios are invented. You can hear the music and go, okay, I'm kind of yesteryear-ish. And also there's a music announcer on there. If you get close enough and hang around, he'll say, welcome, it's New Year's Eve in 1950, or whatever it is. I'm going to get that wrong. So it's a nice storytelling device as well as fills that gap of music. The next section, I've got some drones playing along that develop with time, and they are spatialized in the corridor. So as you go down each of those layers is in a physical place and you walk past them, and it really adds that kind of dream sense, especially with headphones and your head turning and stuff. The music now is sitting in that zone. And I played with that in a couple of places on Wanderer, not as much as I would have liked to, but this is one section that it really worked well in. The stairs up to the lab, there's a bit of a lull, purposefully because I want the next section to hit a little bit harder. And the next section is the lab with the big lasers, and that's where the track kind of kicks in into its fullness, I guess, and then all the layers of that come in right up to the time chamber at the end. Again, I was the sound designer on this and the musician, so I chose big laser sounds over pumping my music. I thought that was more of an important thing in the mix because they're so big. They're the things that are supposed to be scaring you, but the music fills in those gaps in between. And I'll play you what that looks like. Probably not catching a lot of that spatialization on these figures.
I just want to be like you, Papa. I want to go home. Please, I want to go home, Papa, home.
Hey, it's Amelia. Where are you? Snap out of it.
So all these videos, I'll post them to YouTube so you can put on your favorite headphones and have a listen to them in context as well. So the final word, what is the game saying? Is the music saying it too? Like, what agency does your player have, and how can you use that agency for progression? Is it traversal over a period of time? Is it do I need to make sure you know where you are within a puzzle, or what you're doing here? Do I need to remind you of things? I think music has a very big part in reminding the player where they are up to. Get on the narrative pulse. Reaction time versus musicality is another big one. You can write this amazing developing piece of music, but if it can't react with the way the player plays, then you kind of lose a lot of that love if I'm waiting 8 bars to move to the next section, or if I have to slam it straight in with another piece of music without any kind of transition. So balancing what feels right without losing its all its soul with having something that reacts every 5 bars. Every 4 bars. Oops. Go back. Leaving space. This is probably a big choice for me, again, being the sound designer, trusting that sound design has a role and music has a role. You don't need to paint the whole wall one color. Leave some area so that you've got some contrast, and when you need to, you can punch hard because you've allowed that space. And create music for the way the game was intended to be played. I think it's easy to try and get all these catch-all cases of people speedrunning and stuff, and very quickly, if you try and cater to everybody, you'll lose a lot of the soul from what it is that you're doing. So I like to, if you're going to play the game properly, the music's going to be good. If you play it slightly differently, the music should also be great. If you're going to like speed run through things and smash things, the music shouldn't break, but it's not catered to that experience, and it needs, make it for the people who are playing properly. Cool. Also, if you like the stuff that Wanderer's been doing, Mighty Eyes are hiring. You can use promo code JamesRules to get cake on birthday benefits. You'll probably get that anyway. But yeah, they're a cool bunch of people, and they did some amazing stuff, and I was really glad to be working on it with them. Cool. We've got 1 minute for questions. Shout.
As well as how would you know what instruments to use? Like I heard a lot of string instruments and then what made you of the science and get a lot of synths and like electronic sounds being like astronomy?
Sure. So it changed quite a bit depending on where it was. In terms of music, we sat down and said, what kind of stuff do you like? And then we're like, oh, we wanted some stuff that was kind of, and it changed from this original brief, but it was like, we want some stuff that's kind of, I'm forgetting the names of these movies, Interstellar, Blade Runner, those are the kinds of things. But then we have these situations where we're in like Mayan times. And so that was like, most of that was bamboo flute, like with a little bit of strings and stuff in the background. So in terms of how much agency or creativity I had over that, the creative directors, they were awesome. They were just like, go for it. And if we feel like you're off, I don't have discussions. I'm like, what's the emotions on this? I'm thinking this. And they're like, yep, do it. And I'll do it. And then they'd be like, hey, that's cool. This thing's not quite right. But generally, 80% of the time, they were like, you know what I mean? So I was quite free in that area. I've definitely worked with clients before where had to really work to get where they wanted to be. But I can honestly say most of the time, like, it's their vision. You know what I mean? Like, and when we get there, I'm always happy about where we end up being, even if it wasn't my original vision. I understand their vision, and I'm like, cool, that's awesome. So I had quite a bit of agency on this one, yeah. I'm around anyway, so if you want to have a chat about audio stuff, I'm doing another one on implementation. If you haven't really dived into that area, that'd be good. But thank you for coming and being a nice crowd.